Hi, everybody, and welcome to Exegetically Speaking, a podcast of the friends and faculty of Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois, and the Lanier Theological Library in Houston, Texas. My name is David Capes, and I am the Senior Research Fellow at the Lanier Theological Library and a former dean up there in Wheaton at the School of Biblical and Theological Studies. Our purpose in these podcasts is really very simple. We want to promote the study of biblical languages, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, so we can read the Bible more faithfully, study it more fully, and not just read it, but to live it. Joining me today on Exegetically Speaking, Dr. Amy Peeler, Associate Professor of New Testament at Wheaton College. Great to see you, Dr. Peeler. Amy, how are you?
Oh, wonderful. It's always so good to do these programs with you.
Well, thanks for doing it. It's being heard by lots and lots of people. I was at SBL and people were stopping me on escalators and in elevators and places saying, "Oh, I really like that podcast that you guys do." And people I'd never even seen before, but they're hearing it. So that's great.
That's wonderful. Well, you're providing an excellent service.
Well, I'm hoping that more and more people are going to take up the mantle of the prophetic mantle of reading these texts in the original, like you do.
Absolutely.
Now, you're the author of a new book coming out. It'll be out in October of 2022. Tell us a little bit about that before we get started on Hebrews today.
Sure. Yes, actually, we'll get to kind of see two of my two scholarly hats. I spend a lot of time in Hebrews, but I have been spending a lot of time with the story of Mary in the New Testament. And this book is a lot about her story and what her story might mean for women. But then it also asks questions about God's identity as revealed in the scriptures. In particular, what do we do with all this gendered language of God, Father and Son, and all the he pronouns? And so the book is entitled Women and the Gender of God, but exegetically, it's really rooted in all the places where Mary comes up in the New Testament. I've been working on this for a long time. This is a heart project. It was the book that I said at my dissertation defense, this is what I want to do next. And it's taken me a little bit, but I think I needed to become the right person who would write this book.
You have to kind of live into that, right? I mean, you have to kind of mature into that place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm thrilled that it's on its way. Yes.
So who's publishing that book?
That's with Eerdmans, and they've been fantastic to work with. Yeah. Yes. And originally it was this big book all about gender in the New Testament. And we've decided, hey, we're going to focus on Mary in this one. And then I already have a significant amount of work done on kind of a second volume, which will be focused on Paul and gender texts, which, a few people have had a few things to say about that. So I'm a little bit more tentative to enter in, but I think I might have some fresh perspectives that I'd love to contribute.
Well, that's going to be terrific. So I'm looking forward to that because I've been working on Paul for a long time trying to sort him out. Today we're going to talk about Hebrews 3, and you love Hebrews. You've been writing on Hebrews, working on Hebrews for a while. But set us up for this chapter. What's happening in Hebrews chapter 3, the first few verses of that chapter?
Excellent. Yeah, this is a more extended exhortation. So at the beginning of Hebrews, you get this beautiful portrayal, poetic portrayal, appealing to the scriptures of Israel, exclaiming the superiority of the Son, really, that he sits on the throne, that he's eternal, he participated in creation, one of the high Christological watermarks in the New Testament, Hebrews 1. And then, of course, Hebrews 2 is this turn to a robust affirmation of Christ's humanity. So really, you get so much of the seeds of early Christology in Hebrews 1 and 2. You do have a small exhortation at the beginning of 2. Pay attention. Don't forget what you've heard. But then here at the beginning of 3, you get a little bit more extended exhortation to, again, pay attention, give one's mind to considering who Christ is, who Jesus is. And then there's this comparison, pretty brief comparison between Jesus and Moses, that then before he launches off into another exegetical section where he turns his attention to Psalm 95, we get a pretty powerful reflection on Jesus and Moses and God's household, which is really the comparative point around which this turns.
I love this passage because of the symmetry and the beauty between Moses and then the Son and the contrast that's there.
Yes.
What is it that captures your imagination about it the most as you look at this passage?
Yeah. Maybe one of the first things that really grabs my attention is that this is the only place in the New Testament where Jesus himself is called an apostle. right?
Isn't
We
that
know that
right?
he
Yeah.
calls the apostles, but he's called, pay attention, give attention to the apostle and high priest of our confession, Jesus. And so it is a beautiful affirmation of his sentness from God, right? The synoptic tradition and Johannine tradition, he's the one sent from God. And I think that really resonates with Philippians 2, the one who was willingly came, kenosis, poured
Mhm.
himself out, but being sent from God. So it is very much an affirmation of what's already been laid out in 1 and 2, that the Son is eternal and was with God forever, but came and took flesh and blood. So it's that sentness that in this one term, this one unusual term, apostolos, it captures really everything that's said in chapters 1 and 2. So it's a beautiful summation there.
It,
So that's really one of the first things that leaps out to
it
me.
it reminds me of that passage in John, as the Father has sent me, now I am sending you.
Yes,
It seems like that's really
exactly.
matches beautifully. But this is the only place, I haven't thought about that, where Jesus is referred to as an apostle. Is that a
Yes.
title, you
Yes.
think, or is it just a description?
Oh, that's a great question. Holy brothers, being the apostle and high priest of our confession. Well, since it's right next to high priest, I mean, surely that's a title, and right, that's kind of gives you a preview of where this author is going to spend the majority of his time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think I would demur from that too strongly. I think it really does capture the idea of what Jesus has done,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that title would be the right focus there. I need to sit with that. That's a really good question.
The idea of the incarnation is just sort of all over these
Mm,
chapters too, as well. Indeed,
absolutely.
the one who is
Absolutely.
eternal, the one is now the
Hmm.
one who is now present, has been present with us. So the high priest of the calling, of course, high priest is so important. That word faithful to me stands out. This one
Yes.
was faithful to the one who appointed
Hmm.
him. And so not only is he sent, but he's also the appointed one, right? Which has a
Yes.
sense of maybe clarifying what sentness means here.
Yes, yes, and as you know, as your readers will know, this term here, poesanti, poieo, he is faithful to the one who made him, right? If you go back to
Mm-hmm.
kind of basic Greek grammar, poieo is to
Mm-hmm.
do or make, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a place, I was actually just reading about this a few days ago, where of course Arius and Athanasius in conversation are disagreeing on what to do with Hebrews 3:2. Arius
Mm.
would say, look, he's made. And
Yeah.
Athanasius would say, as you just as glossed it, no, he's appointed, he's set in these roles. I think that's correct. I think there is a vocational focus here, the one who appointed him as the one sent, the one
Mm-hmm.
who appointed him as the high priest. But, and I'm really encouraged here by Luke Timothy Johnson's commentary.
Yes.
His is one of my favorite commentaries on Hebrews. But he says, but actually, the made that God made him is in line with what's been asserted in chapter 2, that it's God's will that he became human. God made the flesh and blood that the Son takes on. And so there
Mm-hmm.
is a making here, but it is an incarnational focus, not that the Son, the eternal Son, is made. And so I think that's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
Again, this is a great example for this program.
Exactly. Poieo. I mean, it's so broad there, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
Athanasius can use it one way, Arius can use it another
Yes.
way and try to make their case. That word faithful,
Exactly.
it strikes me too, that Moses was
Yes.
faithful. Jesus is
Yes.
worthy of more glory than Moses.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that
Yeah.
word glory for just a second. What is in that word glory? That's the word doxa, I think, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, yes, and that's a excellent question. When one is writing a commentary, you could really pause and write a paragraph about every word. And so it
Yes.
becomes, this sense of how could I ever say it all?
Then you would be Craig Keener. You write
Exactly,
it,
exactly.
write something on every word, right?
Exactly.
No.
But what immediately pops for me is that you get this amazing affirmation in 1:3, right? That the Son is the radiance
Hmm.
of God's glory. right? And so that this one is worthy of more glory than Moses. I believe that there's a thread throughout this paragraph of not just saying that Jesus is son and Moses is servant. That's true. That's a comparison that's made explicitly. But I also think there is a reiteration of Jesus at his divine status as well. And so this kind of echo back to he's worthy of not just like respect, but of glory, right? That's a divine quality. And so that's what differentiates him from Moses. And my further support would be this interesting comparison then about houses and builders.
Yes.
Jesus is worthy of more honor than Moses, just as the one who builds the house has more honor than the house itself. You're like, well, duh.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But then he goes on to say, and God is the builder of all things, because he's already established the Son's role in creation. It really is the Son, too, is the builder of all things. And so that puts him not just kind of a slightly above Moses, but in a completely different category, really.
Yeah. That's a great way to think about this and a great way to end our podcast today. Talking about Hebrews chapter 3, verses 1 to 6. So many great little nuggets in there. With Moses coming down the mountain and the glory of God on Moses, and yet that is of Moses. That's a fading glory, right?
Yes, yes.
Now the builder of the house, the Son, is the one who is worthy of more glory, the greater weight.
Right. I think Moses shares the glory. Moses shares the words there in 3:6, but Jesus is the glory and Jesus is the word. And there's a beautiful distinction there, but with all due respect to Moses, right? It's built upon the important role that he plays. And Numbers 12, from which the citation comes, God says, hey, he's my man. So
Great.
If Jesus is even better than that, that gives you a sense of how magnificent he really is.
One of the greatest treatises on Christology in all of the New Testament. Dr. Amy Peeler, thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
Glad to be here.
Thanks to Ian Rosine, Rebecca Larson, and Silvio Vasquez, who help us produce this podcast. Thanks as well to John Lansma, our Wheaton-based director, who makes this podcast possible. We're grateful to Phil Keggy for our music. If you want to study biblical languages, then you need to consider Wheaton College. Whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, we have amazing programs, a first-rate faculty, and some of the best students in the world. So go to the website, www.wheaton.edu, and look for modern and classical languages. Get started today. If you have questions about this or any of our podcasts, we'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions or questions about any passage in the Hebrew Bible or Greek New Testament, send us an email and we'll see if we can get one of our experts to weigh in on that for you. Our email is exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks for listening.